Tension in your client's forearms and hands is one of the biggest contributors to having all sorts of issues all the way up the chain. A lot of people, a lot of our clients can actually have carpal tunnel-like symptoms. They can have weakness. They can have lack of coordination and control and motion, not because that there's necessarily a problem within the hand or the wrist itself, but because there's a tremendous amount of gluing or restriction happening within the forearm and the elbow. And so now that we've already worked the upper arm with our arm technique, now we're going to transition into this really great work for the forearm. Now the beautiful thing with this for your clients is that it literally doesn't matter their age, from a year old, well maybe not a year old, but from a couple of years of age all the way until they're 100 plus. We have clients using this to really improve their finite coordination and any kind of pain that they're having in their elbow, tennis elbow, golfer's elbow. People are having a hard time just holding a coffee cup or a cup of tea. This is going to have a huge impact for your clients. So we're going to have a couple of ways that we're going to work this forearm. One version is going to be on the wall, which we're going to do in just a second. This first version, though, that we're going to do is just going to be seated in a chair. So we're going to have Jenna go ahead and sit, and this could be, you could have your client sitting in the chair, in their kitchen chair at home. They could be sitting in a picnic chair in the back porch. They could be on their couch, anywhere where they can be comfortable, and they can just have a little bit of movement from their hips and their pelvis. For some people who are a little shorter, trying to do this on the kitchen table itself can be a little tricky depending on the height of the chair and everything. So I encourage our clients to just go ahead and do this work on their lap. As they're seated and they're nice and comfortable, you're going to get more change out of this forearm, wrist, and elbow when they're not having to strain in other parts of the body. So what we're going to have your clients do first is that they're going to put that roller right on their lap. There's going to be a couple of key points that we really need to have them pay attention to, and it might be a few times in coaching for them to really kind of get to the point where they're doing this effectively, consistently. What happens when the forearm and the upper arm and the hands get glued together is that people lose their finite ability to differentiate each piece and part. So the ability to flex each joint of the finger, of the wrist itself, being able to have the wrist move independently of the elbow. People tend to turn this all into one big giant unit. It becomes very uncoordinated or unrefined motion. And so the big thing that we're going to keep encouraging you to encourage your clients to do is they need to keep their wrists and their hands soft. What's so funny is as people are working through this arm and forearm is that they tend to put their hands into hard daggers, or they tend to want to put their hands into fists because they think that they're going to get more pressure out of being able to work through there. The truth is that the harder that your clients are holding, the less they're going to be able to work into that tissue because it's kicking them out, because everything's contracted and protected. So the motion that Jenna is going to work with is that we're going to have her just do a very gentle pivoting motion at her hips. What a lot of our clients will do with this is that they'll actually push down with their shoulder like they're sawing something, and that also puts a huge amount of strain in the system. So all of this is going to come from, there's that bar going right through the hips, and then we're just going to pivot right forward on that bar, and we're going to pivot back to neutral. The other thing that this is going to help us with is that if you don't pivot while you're doing this, is that we can see it. If Jenna has the roller here, and she just reaches forward with her arms, she can't even get the upper portion of the forearm. And so what people will do is that then they'll slouch to try to get the last of that, and then they're compromising the neck and the shoulder girdle and the back as they're doing this, which again is the opposite of what we're trying to produce. So as she just pivots forward at those hips, this is going to allow her to do a very important thing. And in our manual therapy field, we call this keeping your sternum over your stroke. This is going to allow you to make sure that you have the weight of your body putting the pressure into the roller, and you're not using muscle power to put the pressure. Because muscle power, when you're doing any kind of self-care work or chiropractic work or massage or PT, is very inconsistent. From the first one to the next, you start to lose the ability to put similar pressure because your muscles are going to fatigue. So if she can use the weight of her upper body to do this technique, that's going to be very consistent, and she's going to get more change, and more importantly, she's staying all the way soft while she's doing this. So here's the order that we're going to have our clients do this. So they're going to have the roller on their lap. They're going to start with their hands pronated, and they're going to keep their hand and their wrist all the way relaxed, which is going to be a bit of a challenge. And so all she's going to do is she's just going to pivot forward at those hips, and then she's going to keep that sternum over her stroke, and then she's going to work that roller towards her elbow. Once she gets towards the elbow or where she's leaning just a little too far forward, then we're just going to put the roller back, and we're going to do the same pass 2 or 3 times in a particular line. And the big thing that we need you to let your clients understand is that this cylinder is a 3-dimensional entity, right? So all of these muscles have to work in an equal tone to be able to have effective usage of this whole limb. And if one side gets more contracted than the other, then it's going to have an impact on their ability to do everything that they need to do with their hands. So we're going to work all the way around the cylinder as we're going through. So she would do 2 or 3 passes. After 2 or 3 passes, she's just going to rotate that thumb up towards the ceiling, and you can really work with your clients with different levels of rotation. So if they start all the way pronated and then they just bring it up to a 45-degree angle, you can have them find every degree of rotation that they want to work with here. So we're just going to go ahead and have her turn her elbow straight up to the ceiling. So now, nice and easy, she's going to keep her hands soft, and she's just going to repeat that same technique. Nice and easy, the sternum over the stroke, the wrists are nice and soft. And you're going to find that your clients might even have a hard time. One hand will relax better than the other, and the other hand will stay a little more rigid. And that, again, this is just going to help clean up that somatosensory cortex. For so many of your patients, a lot of their problems aren't because maybe there's even lesions in the tissue, but because the motor in and the sensory in and the motor out are not working appropriately because there's confusion on what muscle area is doing what job. So she's going to continue to work over to a supinated position, and she rolls through that, sternum over the stroke. This all looks beautiful. They can just keep checking in. Are their hands nice and soft as they get through there? And then she's going to come back. So now, to be able to help your clients really refine the work, we're going to have 2 pieces. If a client is having a hard time doing both at the same time, and again, when they do both at the same time, it's a lot of information into their brains, we can have them just pick one side at a time. So let's say Jenna's going to work her right arm. She's going to leave the left arm here. She's going to bring her right arm in a little bit more. Because if we can have our clients bring this arm in more in line with the sternum, they're going to be able to get even just a little bit more weight and pressure. When our arms are further out by our sides, we have to push down to get the pressure. The more I can have that arm in line with my sternum here, I'm really going to be able to sink into that and really soften and relax my shoulder as I go through that. So now it would be the same technique. Jenna would just roll through that tissue wherever she wanted to do the work, and she really can use this hand to control the speed of the roller as she's working through there. And then that's a way that you can really have your clients truly identify what is going on in each arm, and if one side needs a little bit more focused because it's a little more tight, it's a little more held, you know, it's typically that dominant side that is the case, they can spend a little more time on that right side. So now that we've worked with the fibers or with the line of the arm, now we're going to add one of the most important pieces to this whole entire process. And it's going to be, we refer to it as working with rotation. So what happens with so much of this tissue is that when a person is doing whatever job or hobby they're doing consistently, there's these twists that end up happening within the fascial tissue and within the muscle fibers, and this tissue gets glued down and held into those spots. And it's very similar to where throughout the day, if you're doing something and your shirt gets twisted on your body and it feels uncomfortable, if I were to just work up and down with where the twist is and the fibers, it doesn't really address the twist. It actually just moves that shirt up and down. So in order to untwist that shirt, I have to untwist the rotation out of that shirt. And it's the same thing if your socks get twisted. It feels weird, it just doesn't feel right. And so you could just pull the sock up, but the sock is still twisted and you still have that feeling of that twist in there. So that's what we're going to work with now, is the rotational aspect. That is really the big issue that we've found in all of our experience working with patients. So here's how we're going to work with this. So Jenna's going to pick one side to work with. Let's go ahead and switch the sides and even you out just a little bit. So she's going to work with her left arm. Again, she's going to bring it a little bit more to the midline, so it's going to be working a little bit more close to that sternum. She's going to start supinated. So to unravel this twist that happens in the arm, and embryologically the way that the limb bud development happens is that as the limbs come out, they kind of come out at a straight line through here first, and then they have to try to untwist and unravel. So what happens when our clients start to get tight or they're stressed out is that there's this tendency for that connective tissue to go back into that more embryological state where the arms get twisted out. And so we're going to unglue that twist through this forearm, which is going to have a huge impact on the functionality of the elbow and their wrist. So she's going to start supinated, she's going to sink into that tissue, and as she sinks in, again with just her body weight, not muscle power, she's going to now slowly go from supination to pronation, and she's going to feel where those sticky spots are within the fascial tissue and the muscle fibers, and she's going to soften her wrist. Again, that's the hard thing that people really struggle with. And then when she gets to supinated, then that's going to be the end, and then she can come back and we're going to find another spot. So what's great about those first lines where we're working with the fibers is that it's going to let you know where there's the gluing going on within the arm. And then we can go back and be much more specific as we're doing our rotational work. So she's going to go in, and as soon as she starts to feel where it's a little sticky, she's going to go from supination to pronation. And this process is really going to help the twist within that fascial tissue that starts to happen from the gluing. And again, not because we're lengthening the fascial tissue with the foam roller, because that's been proven not to be true. What's happening is that as we stimulate the nervous system in a safe way, the brain then can change the motor out and how it's telling the fascial tissue and the muscle fibers to engage or contract or be stuck together. So this is going to be a very effective way to be able to help your clients get a tremendous amount of coordination, functionality out of their fingers. Whether it's cross-stitching to piano playing to throwing a ball, my ability to have full range of motion within this forearm is key on being able to have the hands and the elbows be effective. So what we're going to go to next is the forearm work for against the wall, which adds a whole nother element to all of this work.